welcome to Twiss, This Week in Space Science. This is Sean Cruzen right here. I'm Michael Baltimore. We're going to help you learn a lot about space science, what's going on planet Earth, but where the planet Earth intersects with all of the others in the solar system and move forward out of that way. But we've got a very special program today, and this one I like a lot because we've, in our society, in our culture, we've used this particular planet in so many ways, and there's always something interesting about it. And people have had a lot of feelings, and there's a lot of psychology and so other things going on. It's the planet Mars.
We're going to be talking about Mars today.
There you go. So we got to go there.
We have a few different things to talk about, but Mars seems to be the focal point of what we need to talk about today on the show. And right now there's something very interesting happening in the nighttime sky with Mars. And that is simply this: Mars is at a position relative to the Earth that astronomers call opposition. That just means it's opposite in the sky from where the sun is.
On the other side of the sun from us.
Right, exactly. So we're in the middle, the sun's in one direction, the planet Mars is in the other direction, or the opposite direction in our sky. That means as the sun is setting, the planet Mars is rising. So at midnight, the planet Mars is high in the sky, and then the planet Mars is setting when the sun rises. That means that Mars is up all night long, so all the hours of the night you can see the planet Mars. It also means that that is a position where Mars is typically at its closest point for this particular set of orbits between the Earth and the planet Mars. It gets close, okay? So it's not as close as it has been in the past, but it's as close as it's going to be for the next couple of years during this period of time that we call opposition. Now the reason we're talking about that today is twofold.
Yes.
Number one, if you're seeing the show anywhere near live, go outside and look at the nighttime sky and see the planet Mars. I was out observing it last night and again this morning in the pre-dawn sky. What a beautiful sight. You can see it very, very clearly. It's shining very bright. It has just that little bit of a rusty red color to it. It looks orange compared to the other stars. You can pick it out rather easily. The star doesn't twinkle. It's because it's not a star. It's actually a planet. Planets don't tend to twinkle the same way that stars do in the nighttime sky, which is a subject for another show.
Oh, yeah.
But the idea is that you can see this planet in the sky all night long, and you really should try to do that. Now here's the second thing.
Yes.
The second reason we have to talk about it today is because a couple of days ago, as I was looking online for stories about this event, I noticed that it was the front page headline on a certain news media outlet, and it basically said this:
Okay.
Mars aligns with Sun and Earth. People predict doom and bloodshed, or something that I'm paraphrasing slightly.
Right.
I'm taking a few liberties, but it was basically kind of a doomsday message. Oh my goodness, the planet Mars is aligning somehow with the sun and the Earth, and they purposely kind of slanted the headline to sound as if this was a bit dangerous.
A lot of sensationalism there to capture somebody's attention, maybe sell more ad space on their television or newspaper, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah,
well, I don't want to suggest that it's all for the profit motive.
Okay,
however,
I would go there. I will do that for you.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
However, I do think this. I think that people, number one, I think they like to be scared, and maybe we can talk about the psychological ramifications of that.
Oh, absolutely. Part of it.
But Mars in particular, when we have stories about Mars, there are just things that I think that are happening in the nighttime sky that are fairly pedestrian or ordinary. I see them all the time. This opposition of Mars happens about every 2 years.
Oh, okay, wait. Every 2 years?
Yes, it's not all that rare. In fact, this isn't a particularly close one. There was an opposition of Mars that occurred in 2003 that was the closest that Mars approached the Earth in about 60,000 years. And mind you, it was only a tiny bit, a fraction closer than it normally is every 2 years. But again, the public imagination just went wild with that. And over 3 nights of open house astronomy nights at our local facility, the Coca-Cola Space Science Center, we had almost 2,000 people go through the observatory and observe the planet Mars during that period of time, just because the media covered it in kind of a sensational way. And again, I see this similar kind of phenomenon taking place, and I just have to. This is where I turn the tables on you, Mike. Normally you're asking me all the questions on this show.
Yep, I got a couple ideas about this.
Dr. Baltimore's background is in counseling, and so what I want to do is I want to just ask Mike, why does this happen?
Well, you know, there's a lot of phenomena. It's hard to pin down on one one thing particularly, but there are just concepts out there that kind of stimulate our need to be afraid. Sometimes it's anxiety levels, and it calls us to action. I think it's part of our culture as well, but there are a lot of reasons why people want to be a little afraid, a little scared about what's going. It kind of puts things into motion for us. It's a need we have. It's something that we have to have in our lives, and it's very interesting that Mars has been the target. We've used Mars so many times.
Mars is clearly the target in this case. Is it some inherent need we have for some extra drama in our life or something? Is that what kind of propels this thing?
I really do think that's part of it, that this idea that we have to be a little on edge, a little afraid of something, and also it's experimental, it's unknown. So the unknown is always that way. And I think as human beings we have this quest to kind of move in that direction, to discover things. You know, not just scientific, in a scientific way, but in a sort of emotional, psychological way. So that people need to be a little frightened. They need to have that sensation. They need to, you know, get that pump of energy there. And that's why you see all of these headlines. And because the people who put these headlines out, whether it's a newspaper or the media and other formats, they know the reaction. They know that people are going to respond to those things. And so that's what happens. And the good news for you is you got a lot of visitors to the Coca-Cola Space Science Center as a result of that one that you just talked about.
Yes,
so.
Indeed, that does occasionally happen. But what I like to try to do in public forum like this one is just to reassure folks that, hey, it's a mathematical curiosity or a geometric curiosity. It's really not a whole lot more than that, all right? And in fact, I've got one more graphic I think we can put up here that shows the various configurations that the planet Mars can, or any planet that's further from the sun than we are, can move into at various times. And this opposition that's coming is just one of those kinds of configurations. So when you have, here's the diagram. Here we have the sun in the middle. The Earth is to the right there. It's the blue dot. Those 4 red dots can represent the planet Mars, or in fact, they can represent any planet that's further from the sun than we are. So Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, dwarf planets, any of those can go through this particular setup. So, but think about Mars. So right now you see the sun in the middle, you see the Earth to the right, and you see another red dot to the right of that. That's opposition. So when Mars and Earth are in their relative configurations, geometrically speaking, that look like that, we say that Mars is at opposition. And from this diagram, you can see why that's Mars' closest approach to the Earth, right? That's the shortest dashed line that can exist between the planet Earth and some planet that's in an orbit greater than ours. There are 2 other positions called quadrature. You can see that they're not 90 degrees relative to the sun. They're in 90-degree positions relative to the Earth and the Earth-Sun line. And so in the sky, they would look as if the sun was 90 degrees separated from that object in the sky. And that's why they get that name quadrature, as if the sky is broken up into 90-degree 4 even increments. So the last position is conjunction. Now that's when the planet is on the opposite side, directly opposite of the sun from where we are. And the conjunction position, you can't ever see a planet in conjunction because the sun's in the way.
Exactly.
And if you think about that, if you're on Earth and you're looking toward the sun, that's daytime, right? So you're really going to have a hard time seeing that anyway because the light from the sun is dominating that part of the sky.
Well, that opposition, you know, if that opposition position there, if that were Mars, and we're on Mars, it looks like the Earth is. You know, we're going to have a little blackout there.
It would appear from this diagram where the sun is a little tiny yellow star.
A little eclipse,
and the Earth is a really giant blue star. But there's 2 things that happen. Number one, this diagram is not to scale.
Oh, okay,
right?
there you go.
So the scales of the distances and relative sizes of the planets and the sun not represented accurately in this diagram. The distances are vast compared to the diameters of even the sun and the Earth and Mars particularly compared to their relative distances. So it's as if you're talking about little grains of sand moving around in their orbit.
Okay.
But so you wouldn't get a blocking of the sun from that position, not an eclipse or anything like that.
Right, okay, I got it.
There's another factor, which is this. As we see these 2 orbits right here, you see the Earth's orbit in blue and Mars's orbit in red. those two orbits are actually tilted relative to each other just slightly, a few degrees. We call that inclination in astronomy. So those two orbits are inclined to one another just a little bit. And that tilt of those orbits, they actually prevent the planets from ever perfectly aligning.
Okay.
In this alignment that people think of. There's never a perfectly straight line that would intersect all three, Mars, Earth, and the Sun.
Okay, so you're talking about that plane that the planets are from Sun to Earth to Mars in this case.
Correct.
And not so.
If you think about the
above or
orbits of
below.
the planets as planes, as you just said,
Right.
those two planes don't line up.
Okay.
And so you get a little bit of tilt relative to those two planes, and so you can't really hit all three with a straight line anyway. So you don't have a classic true alignment as is described on occasion when these kinds of events take place. You just have one on one part of the sky and the other one on the other part of the sky, and they're pretty close to 180 degrees apart from one another, but not exactly.
Okay.
All right. So
That's pretty interesting because, when we were kids in 5th and 6th grade and going through school, they had the little mechanical solar system that would move around, and all the planets were on that same plane.
That's right.
And that
Yep.
moved, well, that was because they had to build it in that way, probably.
It made
was
it a
hard
little
do
easier
the
to
other-
build that way.
Right, a little easier to build, but what you're saying is those planets may not be completely on that same plane.
That's
so
exactly
very
right.
interesting.
That
thing.
mechanical representation that you're talking about has a neat name that's from antiquity. It's called an orrery. An orrery. And so an orrery is a mechanical model of the way that the planets move around the sun. And yes, you're right. It's often, even that's oversimplified
Right.
compared to what's actually going on out there in space. But this is just another good example. Ladies and gentlemen, remain calm. Right? It's some interesting geometry, but it doesn't really go beyond that. There's another event that's coming that's going to take place that is another piece of interesting geometry, but it doesn't have to do with the planet Mars. It has to do with the moon. And the moon is going to come into this position where it's going to be eclipsed by the Earth's shadow. So we're going to have what's called a lunar eclipse. What happens in a lunar eclipse is it's almost like that opposition case. You have the moon on one side of the Earth, you have the sun on the other side of the Earth, but this time the moon and Earth are close enough together relative to their sizes that they can actually block the light out one from another on occasion. Now, even that's rare because the moon's orbit is inclined to the Earth's orbit by 5 degrees. So it has to be at these special points where the moon crosses the Earth's orbit, and it has to be exactly at full moon phase in order for this lunar eclipse to happen.
Okay.
One of those is coming.
Here we go.
Depending on when you're watching the show online, it may have already happened, but it's on tax day 2014. I find that ironic, by the way.
Yes, that's a headline for you
On
right
tax
there.
day, the moon will turn red as blood,
Okay.
and the sky will grow dark, because it was a full moon until this eclipse happened, and then
right.
the sky's going to grow dark. And it's not just because your taxes are due here in the United States.
May feel like that for
It
some
might
of us,
feel like
some of-
that. It
yeah.
might feel like
All
that.
right.
Eastern Standard Time, which is where we're at here,
Okay.
that's going to occur at about between 2 and 3 a.m. on the morning of April 15th, 2014. So
Okay.
but that one is a lunar eclipse that's going to take place. Actually, we will be webcasting that lunar eclipse at the Space Science Center, our website, www.ccssc.org, ccssc.org. We'll be webcasting that particular lunar eclipse, but if you miss it for some reason, because this isn't a live show,
Sure.
don't worry, there are more coming.
There are more.
In fact, this lunar eclipse is the first in what's called a tetrad of lunar eclipses, 4 that happen in relatively short span of time, roughly 6 months apart. So over the next 18 months or so, we're going to see a series of 4 lunar eclipses. One on April 15th, another one in October of 2014, then back to April of 2015, and then at the end of September in 2015. So you'll have 4 lunar eclipses that happen in reasonably rapid succession. And so because they're all grouped together like that, they call them a tetrad. These tetrads of lunar eclipses are reasonably rare. They only happen a few times within a couple of thousand years. But there have been a cluster of them recently. Now, now you have Mars being extremely close, and the first of a tetrad of lunar eclipses taking place at the same time.
Well, something's going to happen, I'm sure.
Mass hysteria.
There you go. Well, this show is
People
about,
running into the streets.
I know, but this show is about science. Wait, what is that picture there? Now
Well,
I take it back.
That's about science right there. You know, this is Mars attacks, and you know, I just think that people have this unreasonable fear when the planet Mars
I'm not
gets
sure
involved.
why that picture popped up there, but yes, I understand.
But it's
it
a perfect. It relates the sentiment I'm feeling very perfectly because
Yes.
people have this kind of unreasonable paranoia about Mars and the moon. There are a couple of red objects. They're scary, and things are happening. Ladies and gentlemen, remain calm. Again, it is a statistical.
Now, unless you see, excuse me, but unless you see that guy that was on the screen a moment ago, you should be okay.
Yes,
But-
it's a statistical peculiarity, but it is not the end of the world, and Mars is not attacking. It's not even really aligning. It's just
Not aligning,
going to be
even,
at
not
opposition.
much less attacking.
And then we're going to have a few lunar eclipses that are going to take place after that.
Okay.
Remain
All
calm. Enjoy these sights in the
Yes,
nighttime
enjoy
sky.
it. Yeah, absolutely.
So the website we gave you earlier will be webcasting those future lunar eclipses as well.
They can just tune in
You can
on
tune
the
in,
web
exactly.
and see that live. Okay,
That's
great.
exactly
deal.
right.
That's very nice.
So there you go. There's the upcoming doom and devastation from the sky. Now I have to just admit. So we were kidding around. We showed, you know, the Mars attacks critter there, and
I'd like to see him again. Daniel, can you just pull this guy back up because he's got such a nice smile, but those eyes. And I saw the movie, so I know what happens. He's up to no good.
He's
up to no
They appear to
good.
be friendly, but they really have hostile intentions, as all Martians do.
Okay, that's pretty much we've established that. Since we haven't actually discovered scientifically any Martians yet.
Well, but see, but that segues perfectly into
Okay.
our next story,
All right,
because
what's up?
I now have what I believe is evidence from NASA of the existence of life on Mars.
All right,
And that
this show is going downhill fast here. We've got to recover this. You better explain this.
I will show you the photograph. You decide.
Okay, here we go.
This is an actual photograph from the Mars Curiosity rover, and let's go to it now. We're going to see a
believe you
beautiful
said that.
terrain. If
Wait.
you look just left of
What is
center,
that?
right at the horizon
That?
line, you're going to see what's clearly a beacon from a Martian civilization. There's a
Oh,
light
my
on the
goodness,
horizon.
okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is not
This
not
from-
Nevada,
this
although it
from
looks very
NASA.
much like Nevada because I went to grad school out there, and this is pretty much what it looked like.
JPL, I mean, this is the real deal.
This is Mars.
All right,
And
something's
the
wrong
important
here.
thing you need to know is that glint of light, that flash of light at the horizon, was not in photographs that were taken just prior to this one. So what
Okay.
in the world is going on Mars? I think Daniel, let's zoom in here. We can take a little closer look. There it is.
Yes.
There's a zoomed in version of the photograph.
That doesn't help
Ladies and
much.
gentlemen,
What is
I'm not
that?
joking here, and this is no Photoshop involved. That's an actual picture from the Mars Curiosity rover, and
Okay.
clearly you can see the Martian guy we showed you a few minutes ago
No,
firing his
no,
laser
that
gun.
is not right. You need to correct this, Dr. Cruzen,
Okay.
because something is amiss here. That has to be explained in some way. We
Well,
need to know what's going on.
What I'm
here.
going to do is I'm going to offer up NASA's official version
Okay,
of
thank you very
events,
much.
which is this is the sun glinting off a shiny rock. So there's
All
a
right, got
shiny
it.
rock.
Got it. Thank you.
As many shiny rocks on
close.
Mars are found, particularly right there at the horizon line. This is just yet another in a series of very shiny rocks on the surface of Mars that happen to catch the sun just right and flash light across
We
the
have some
Martian
people
surface.
in our audience out here shaking their head right now. They do not believe that. They think there's something else going on. It's
Well-
a cover-up, and we need to get to the bottom of it.
Can I
but-
say that the interwebs are abuzz? The interwebs are abuzz once this photograph actually made it out there online.
This is not
and,
right.
And so this has set off many conspiratorial people who love to foster these conspiracy theories that this is yet another piece of evidence of life on Mars.
I have been on this show with you quite a while now, and because of that, I've learned a lot, and as our viewers have also learned a lot with this. We're going to go with the NASA explanation. I think that's where we're going to go right now. I want to encourage
I'm
people
tempted to do that. I'm tempted to do that myself. But before we do, I think it's important
Here we go.
to show you a few other
Yes.
actual photographs
Okay.
of the surface of the planet Mars and let you piece this together and decide for
Oh,
yourself.
no, this is going to confuse folks. I'm
We
sure,
are
right
going to
here.
start with a classic from 1976. Feel like a classic rock radio station right now.
All right, there we go.
We're going to go all the way back to 1976 for this great classic. It's called The Face on Mars. Let's see if we can see the face on Mars. There it is right there.
Oh,
Taken
yes.
from the
Remember
Viking 1
this one.
orbiter. As you can clearly see, that is a member of the cast of Lost.
And
their face somehow appeared
only
even
the
before
face,
the series
not
was
the
made.
rest of the body, I might add. But yes.
Okay, now
So-
unfortunately, when higher resolution images of this particular feature were taken, this is simply a butte, not unlike Pine Mountain, which is just outside of Columbus, Georgia. It's a hogback ridge. And in fact, the winds of Mars have eroded this feature away.
Oh, really?
Even in this particular light shadowing, it doesn't look like that anymore because
Oh.
those Martian winds are kind of hostile. So okay, enough of the face on Mars. But
Okay.
let me offer up further evidence of
Yes,
strange
you have
goings on
more.
the surface of Mars. Yes, I do have Mars. More on Mars. Here it comes, the Mars Yeti.
Wait, that looks like the Bigfoot on Mars.
Doesn't it look like the Patterson video from taken
It
out
does,
in
the shape
in the
of it,
Pacific
yeah.
Northwest?
It's got this arm out, you know.
That is
he's looking
clearly,
toward the camera.
I would say a Yeti. Now, of course, the image scale, he would be about 4 inches tall.
Oh.
But maybe it's a Yeti. It's possibly a Yeti
See, now
statue.
bringing that part up, it just kind of brings it back down.
Well,
to earth
I have to
right
offer
here,
up
I'm saying.
some level of
4
scientific integrity,
inches.
or I'm going to be removed from Columbus State Television.
That's what
So
I'm wondering about.
This
But
is
this is a really good
this
photo.
is what's become known as the Mars Yeti rock on the surface of Mars.
Listen, we haven't found the Yeti here, so I don't know if we're going to find him
Well,
on
it's
Mars.
because he went up to Mars. He's
Maybe
obviously
that's a
he
trip-
winters there apparently.
Trip to Mars.
So there it is.
All right, that's fun.
Yet another strange-looking rock on the surface of Mars is this one. It is the Mars rat. Now it's on the left-hand side of the photograph in the box, but we have a magnified version on the right-hand side, and in the center of that red circle, do you see a rat?
That's a gopher or something just on the surface of Mars.
There's
What's
a rodent.
going on?
It's clearly a rodent.
It's a rodent.
No rock could possibly look like that. So
All right, listen closely, viewers. I think you just got a clue.
So this is okay. So these are rocks on the surface of Mars that trigger our brain's
Yes.
pattern recognition, and we see these clever and interesting shapes.
We want to believe. That's part of the issue we were talking about earlier. We want these things to be true at some level. That's a very interesting.
Well,
phenomenon.
and this is the kind of professional interpretation I
There
was
we
actually
go.
hoping for, because
Yeah.
I am a mere planetary scientist, and I can only tell you that they're rocks. I can't really address why it is that people's minds want to complete the connecting of the dots and call that a rat. And say, look, it's a rat. There's clearly a rat on Mars. But
Right.
Rats
Well-
would actually explode on Mars because the atmospheric pressure is
pretty
such
bad
that
up
it would,
there, right?
yeah, the
Yeah.
pressure inside the body would be more than outside, and they
Not
would.
going to happen.
they would
A lot
pop,
of
yeah, so-
explanations for this not being true up there. But you said pattern recognition earlier. That's a piece of it, I think, and that's why people want to complete the dots. I like what you're saying about that.
Our minds are very skilled at connecting patterns, and that's a survival instinct.
And, you know, it
but it's
just makes-
combined with some of the psychological things I think you were talking about earlier.
Yeah,
our need to believe. in
Listen,
some
it
sense.
makes a better story too, don't you think? I mean, it's there's another rock. I'm like, oh, this one looks like something. That sensationalism, that storytelling, I think it's part of it as well.
Well,
All right, I
well,
hope you don't have any more photos.
I do. I actually have
Oh,
one more in the
no.
series.
Here we go.
This is not so much because it looks like something, but this was a strange story, and we talked about this on an earlier show. But since we're talking about Mars, I have to bring this one up.
Oh, yes.
This
Here
is
we
the
go.
famous jelly donut.
The moving jelly donut.
It only
if I
looks
remember.
somewhat like a jelly donut. But this is two photographs. The one on the left-hand side is a different day, same area of Mars. The one on the right-hand side is just a few days later, and suddenly this rock is there that wasn't there before. Now, you have to wonder, okay, how did that rock get there? And clearly that little guy with the helmet that we saw only a few minutes ago threw this jelly donut looking rock into the photographic path of the Mars Curiosity rover, and there it is.
Yes, I'm wondering. Now, you mentioned a moment ago about the winds. The face
I did
picture
mention
that we saw, and the winds are blowing, and it's changed the face of that. Could this rock have been blown over?
The
in a
answer
way?
is possibly.
Possibly. Okay,
Actually,
all right,
possibly.
good. I'm
That's one of the possibilities that have been expressed. There are three possibilities that were kicked around. That's
Okay.
one of them.
All right.
One of the other ones is it's just the wheel of the rover. As it was turning itself, it kicked a rock up. That occasionally
edge of
happens.
the tire. Right. Okay.
I
got
live
it.
on a dirt road. That occasionally happens to me in my pickup truck.
Sure.
The truck will kick up a rock, and then it may have thrown it over there. The third possibility is, and this is unlikely but still possible,
Okay.
that the surface of Mars was struck relatively nearby with some kind of micrometeorite impact, and it kicked an ejecta blanket out, which would be material sprayed out away from that impact zone, and then one of those rocks just happened to land in the photographic path of the Mars Curiosity rover. Now, none of these photographs that we've shown you have been doctored in any way other than to just kind of highlight these regions.
Right.
These are actual photographs on the surface of Mars, and again, it's unusual, it's weird, and there's something in the back of our minds that just wants to believe that something mysterious is going on, and jelly donut rocks are being tossed out there in front of the camera of the Mars Curiosity rover.
But it's all about Mars, you know? We don't talk about the other planets in this way. I mean, occasionally, you know, here on CSU TV and late night viewing, if you've seen a lot of our what we call B-grade movies, our old black and white movies that we play, and there are just only a few Venus movies. Yeah. Most of them are Mars. It seems like when we're being invaded or something happening. So
this is not really a new phenomenon with Mars exploration. You know, our Mars exploration has gotten very advanced nowadays, but we can track this back to when we talk about H.G. Wells writing The War of the Worlds,
right?
Or Orson Welles producing the radio program of The War
classic.
of the Worlds. And both of those literally scared the heck out of people because they're creepy stories about Martians coming in and invading our planet. And it's something about the possibility that Mars is just Earth-like enough that there's some limited, very minor possibility that you could find some sort of liquid water on Mars, which might lead to some rudimentary form of life. Mars has seasons similar to Earth. There are various similarities, and it's just similar enough that I think that because of that possibility of some sort of life is out there, and our need to believe that we are not alone in this great big universe, that we really want to create these life on Mars kind of scenarios.
Right. I think you're right about that. This has been a very interesting and entertaining show today, and I really thank you for bringing in, started out with Mars alignments and so forth. Oh my goodness, and then we got a picture of the Mars attack guy on there. So somewhere with
we've
all
had a
those
little
crazy
fun
pictures.
today, and maybe today wasn't the highest scientific integrity, but I was being mildly sarcastic today, just trying to point out that this phenomenon really exists because we still have folks calling us every August saying, I heard that Mars was going to appear as bright and big as the full moon in the sky. Well, that's because there was an internet hoax that went around called the Mars hoax, and it recirculates every August.
Really?
And so it's something that began in that close approach of 2003, and so because we have to deal with these things in our public education about the truth about what's going on in the nighttime sky and getting people factually on base, I thought I would have a little bit of fun today and just point out the people's nerves about the planet Mars.
It's very interesting, and I think you brought us a lot of good science today, too, despite what you said. But there are 4 blood moons in the next 18 months.
Yeah, so
I remember you saying
we call them a blood moon, and that's kind of a popular term, not really a scientific term. It's because the moon turns red during a lunar eclipse. That little bit of light that passes through the Earth's atmosphere, as most of the light is blocked out because of the Earth, there's a tiny bit of light that passes through Earth's atmosphere. Earth's atmosphere does a very good job of scattering out blue light, so only the red light makes it through, and it turns the moon that kind of ruddy red color, or deep orange in some cases, as you see here. And so yes, there are 4 lunar eclipses coming. They should all have that kind of reddish hue to them. That can vary by the amount of pollution or volcanic dust that's in the atmosphere of the Earth at the time of the eclipse. So we'll be looking for that series of lunar eclipses to take place in the nighttime sky over the next couple of years.
Now, before we go, you do have one more story. I remember you mentioned before we started something about a meteor caught on camera.
This is a weird story, and I would just throw it out here because
don't want to miss
as we're recording the show, this is yet again the latest viral sensation online. One of them, at least. This was a skydiver, a Norwegian skydiver, that while jumping and parachuting was wearing a GoPro and captured images, actually captured video of something zipping by. And then those video frames were analyzed as still images, and what was passing by was a rock. It was a big rock that went zipping by him as he's falling out of the sky from an airplane. Now, That means that it had to be going faster than he was going. And so
Right.
this is looking like something that was probably traveling at what they call terminal velocity, or in other words, as fast as it can go with the air resistance in Earth's atmosphere.
It went by him, right?
It went by him.
really
So
fast.
let's
Okay.
see this photograph right here. This is a collage taken from that video image. And so you can see it's almost like a time sequence of where this rock was. You can see that it is a rock.
Yes.
It's kind of rotating there and flipping by as it goes by. Now, in the actual video you can see online, it happens very, very fast. The skydiver's name was Anders Hellstrup. He's the one who was wearing the GoPro camera and caught these images. And ever since this video came out, people have been trying to figure out, is it a piece of debris that fell off the aircraft? Or
yeah.
is it a rock that came out of the parachute? Or is it really a meteor falling from the sky, zipping through Earth's atmosphere, and this skydiver just happened to, in the most peculiar of coincidences, capture this thing zipping by?
It is that, and it could have come a little closer to him. He would have been in some serious danger, I would imagine.
I don't
with
think he
that.
wanted to get hit by a rock, regardless if it came from space or not. But yeah, you know, obviously, if it's a rock coming in from space, it's coming in at a very high rate of speed, and so this thing went zipping by, and the online community, particularly the astronomers who are out there online as well, are communicating with each other, and they're just trying to figure out, could this actually be a meteor? Now, I'll have to tell you that I was reading today, and our friend Phil Plait, who's been to the Space Science Center a few times, he writes the Bad Astronomy blog. He was on Slate, and he was writing in his blog. I think he's more or less concluded with some conversations with other folks. This was probably just a rock that was somehow tucked in the parachute, and maybe not an actual meteor from outer space, but no one's really sure. And so that mystery kind of remains, and there it is, the mysterious parachute rock. Sounds like a story that belongs on the planet Mars.
I was thinking there has to be some connection with Mars, because that's our show. Ladies and gentlemen, that is our show for today. You've been watching This Week in Space Science with Dr. Sean Cruzen, the Executive Director of the Coca-Cola Space Science Center. You can go to their website at ccssc.org, Charlie, Sam Charlie.org, right here in Columbus, Georgia at Columbus State University. And you're also watching Columbus State Television. I want you to tune in every week and find out more about science, just like we did today. And let's dispel some of those myths, but let's learn what it is that's going on in space science. So thank you for viewing. We'll see you next time.